you have all of this emotion and energy, excitement, hopes, dreams, all that stuff compressed down to a single moment. And then you either know one way or the other. For me, that turned into a crown, literally a golden Grammy. But then it is our joy as Christ followers to then cast that crown back at the feet of Jesus. My name is Philip Sheegog. I'm an InterVarsity alumnus and the cellist of the Grammy Award-winning string duo Arkai. Welcome to InterVarsity World Changers.
Philip, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, John. We were chatting earlier before we started rolling that somehow it's already been a year since the last time we did this. And I think that, we've got two data points now. So I think we just need to make this like an annual tradition or something.
Hey, you will not find me fighting you on that idea. That's amazing. That's great. Now, the question is, since both of our conversations have been on different podcasts, do we need to start a third podcast so that it's like each one is just a unique place that we do this? So,
you gotta have. Okay, that'll be this year's game plan: is develop a new podcast, launch the podcast, so that we can premiere our third episode together.
Exactly. I love that idea. That sounds fun. Launching podcasts is well, it's not easy, but it's a fun time.
You're the expert in the field. I'm going to rely heavily on you for this.
Well, all right. Well, we'll talk more about that behind the scenes. For now, I'd rather divert us to your expertise, Philip. And man, 2026 has been quite a year for you. How are you feeling? Just a couple months into the new year here.
Well, like you said, it's been off to a rather explosive start, and I take everything pretty much in stride as a chill dude. But I'm already very excited for what the rest of the year will hold based on how it started out. Let's say,
yeah. That's awesome. I mean, as our listeners would know from the intro, you are part of a Grammy-winning duo. But what they might have missed is that Grammy win was like this year. This is like just happened. We are fresh on the heels of that. So I'm excited that you had some time in your schedule to come chat with us, not just about the win itself. I do want to hear about that. But even just sort of the longer game here of what's been going on in the world of music and Arkai and the ways that God has been inviting you to partner with him in his work through all of those things. So I'm excited to chat through those things together, Philip. But I'm wondering, in case anybody missed it, could we rewatch via your Instagram account or Arkai's Instagram account? Could we rewatch your win together, and people can watch in with us if they're tuning in on YouTube or Spotify, and maybe you can break down kind of the moment for us?
Yeah, for sure. Let's roll it.
Okay, sweet. Let me get this pulled up here, and we will do that. All right, can you see that?
There it is.
Okay, here we go. And I think I had it share audio as well. All right, here we go.
And the Grammy goes to Arkai. Yeah!
Oh man.
Yeah,
All right, I'll pause.
There's moments in life that are just raw, where you can a lot of life you can kind of like hide behind a persona or a demeanor of how you want to present, but then there's certain moments where it's like whatever's in there, it really comes out.
That was just 100% excited Philip right there that we got to see.
Yeah, I feel like in most of life, like I said earlier, pretty, I very energetic and optimistic, but there's two occasions where I kind of turn into this, like, I get this like rage monster face. It's when I'm performing on stage, and in moments like that where if you take like a screenshot, it's like, whoa, there's something in there, but it's whatever it is, it comes out time to time. But yeah, it's right. Raw and real.
That is well. Thank you for indulging me as we watch that together. I would love to know though, like looking back now, it's been a few weeks. I mean, I guess by the time this airs, maybe it will have been a month or so. But as best as you can recall, like as you're sitting there waiting for that final word of who has won, like what's going through your mind in that moment? And then as you go running down the aisle towards the stage, what's happening internally?
Yeah, well, it's a really unique and kind of bizarre feeling that the only other time I felt something like that was when we found out that we were nominated. And the reason why it's so unique is because you have all of this emotion and energy, excitement, hopes, dreams, all that stuff compressed down to a single moment. And unlike even something like a high pressure performance or these other big moments, oftentimes, that there's a little bit of that emotion and energy kind of has some time to be released. But with this, it's literally like a gunshot. Like everything is up to that moment, and then you either know one way or the other. And so, and the other thing about that moment that people might not know is that the ceremony that we were at is a ceremony that's separate from the televised one. So all the Song of the Year, Best New Artist, that's on the televised Grammys that are that evening. But the bulk of the Grammys, like 90 of them, 90 of the 100 Grammys, give or take, are done at this ceremony in the afternoon, and that takes a long time. So that event is like 3.5, maybe 4 hours long, and we were like fifth from the very end. And so we're just waiting this whole time for hours and hours, just trying to be chill, trying to keep our cool, supporting our friends who are there winning their stuff.
Yes.
But just being chill until, we reached the boiling point, and it finally happened. So, internally though, we'll get more into this throughout our conversation, I'm sure. But for me, so much of the process leading up to that day was really one of doing my best to both be excited, but also to surrender the results of it, right? As a duo, as a team with my duo partner, Jonathan, our approach and kind of I would even say, our mindset as a duo was that the best thing that we could do was to walk into the room knowing that we had given the best we could, right? That we had done everything. We had put in all the work that we could, so we would walk in with no regrets, no matter what happens. Yeah. I think that I had the additional framework and context of, yes, I've done the very best work that I could, but also I am surrendering this to God. And I trust that no matter what happens, He's the one who's leading this journey. He's the one who's been making my path straight. And so I think there was kind of a 1-2 punch there going on inside my heart and my mind. But then, of course, it's an amazing thing that happens, and that the cannon goes off and all the emotions come out, and I turn into my little rage monster for a bit. And then it's a completely surreal, kind of out of body experience of whoa, I'm running down the aisle. Oh my gosh, I'm walking up on the stage. Oh, now I can see with this whole theater filled with thousands of people the who's who of the music community are all here. I'm shaking Darren Chris's hand. And then, thank God that a friend of ours the night before had advised us to print out our acceptance speech. He's like, don't even handwrite it. You don't want it on a crumpled piece of paper that's all flappy and flopping around on camera. Print it out. And so I did that literally that morning, and that's awesome. And then we're there doing the speech, and totally a surreal moment for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So amazing. I have to know, did you, as you're jogging down the aisle, I noticed that there's a high five that gets exchanged. Was that with somebody that you knew, or was that just hey, is this a fellow musician that's just super excited? Okay.
Totally random. I have no idea who that person is, but I appreciated the enthusiasm.
Yes, absolutely. It's nice when other people are celebrating right along with you, even if they weren't the ones that won. That's super cool. I love that. And I love that idea of, just the surrender of it all, of being satisfied with the part that was yours to do. As you all are, the work that's gone in the years leading up to it, in particular, as you're developing Brightside, and I'm sure just so much of the thought and thoughtfulness that went into preparing that and performing it, and then to be able to say okay, in this moment, I have done what there is for me to do. And now I wait in surrender for whatever the Lord's going to do next, because out of my hands at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. In a lot of ways, it both this moment, but also so many moments in the past have just rung true this verse that I picked. Like, I think when I was 17, because my Christian homeschool group wanted all of the graduating seniors to have a life verse. Okay. Because, of course, when you're 17 years old, you know what your life verse is going to be.
Exactly.
But I picked, perhaps, with some a divine wink and some foreknowledge. It's Proverbs 21:31, which says, "The horse is prepared for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord."
Wow.
And in so many ways, it kind of feels like all these moments where it's like, yeah, we're called to work heartily as unto the Lord, right? Use our talents, right? All of those things. But then the Christian perspective is that you do all that work, you prep the horse, get it ready. But then ultimately the victory, right? The outcome, which may look the way we hope it does, or it might be in a different way that we don't have the vision to see how it'll work out, but we trust that to the Lord.
Yes. As you've been experiencing these things, Philip, over the last the weeks that have happened since the win, I would love to know, like, what things have changed, what things are different, what things have stayed the same, and like what things are still a mystery in the midst of all of this.
Absolutely. So, like you said, some things have changed, and a lot of things haven't changed. So, the ways that things have changed are, there are already new doors that are open to us. Okay. There's new conversations that we can have, or are much easier to have, because you have one of the greatest stamps of legitimacy in our industry. Right. And especially for a project that is as niche as we are, right? It's instrumental string music that is pulling from all these different genres. We're a unique nut. For sure.
It was like you and Bella Fleck that were up for this. Like,
yeah, exactly. Legend, goat of the banjo. So, from a business perspective and like growing our business, because that's what it is for us. It's our entire livelihoods. It's a unique challenge, and that those challenges, right, oftentimes are also the things that help you. Right, it cuts both ways, but this definitely helps open doors for us. And so when I said that I'm very excited for what 2026 brings, it's because I'm really hopeful to see how the momentum and the kind of booster shot that this is, how that can turn into building the long-term sustainability, viability of Arkai, not just as an artistic project, but as a business that supports us and, the lives that we're trying to build. So that's a way in which things have changed. The way that things haven't changed, though, are what we're doing day to day, right? It's the work continues, right? We got back, we celebrated, we went to Disneyland for a couple hours. Then we got back to New York, and it's right. The work continues, and even though some of these conversations are happening, doors are open, it doesn't change things overnight. And so a lot of the like we're going to be working today in the studio. Yesterday we were in the studio working on upcoming tracks. Jonathan's busy working on booking the next tours, right? The day-to-day stays the same. Yeah. And I think even maybe at a deeper level, who we are hasn't changed that much. Like, of course, you update the bio on the website, and gosh, it's been my nightmare at parties. Everyone introduces you as like, "Hey, this is my friend. He just won a Grammy," and I'm like, kind of shriveling in the corner. Oh my gosh! And so that's changed a little bit, but I think internally, who we are, our perspective on ourselves, on our music, that hasn't changed much.
That's amazing. Are there things that you look at and you're like, well, okay, we don't know what's going to happen in these places? I mean, you mentioned some amount of hopefulness, but like, are there things that still just feel mysterious in the waters that you're swimming in?
Definitely the how. The how things are going to progress this year is, right, there are plans that we have. We're trying to put together the best strategy, all of the, right, again, using our best judgment, using the skills we have to try to plot a course. But the actual how it's going to happen, right? Who are the collaborators? What is the release strategy? What are the touring markets? All these things, we won't know until we go through them, and we'll look back, and of course we'll see. And, I trust that in the same way that I believe that the Lord has been kind of the wind in our sales.
Yeah.
I believe that that'll continue. I trust that that'll continue, and I'll be able to look back and be like, okay, we just got through a few more hoops, and it makes sense in hindsight. But with the entertainment world is a crazy, crazy place, and it is it takes a lot of tenacity and a lot of just endurance. But I'm grateful that we've made it this far, and that, again, signposts like this to me are just confirmations of like, keep going, keep running.
Yes, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and I would have to imagine. I mean, you're no stranger to the idea that, like, the entertainment industry and everything that goes along with it. It can be a fickle place as well. It can be like, well, but what have you done lately? Like, that's great, but what's next? And I'm at this moment, Philip. I don't want to ask you what's next. You're talking about hows, and we asked me like mysteries and things like, well, we don't exactly know how this is going to happen. I want to ask you about some hows that you do know the answers to, and those are things that have happened in the past here. I would love to just hear a little bit of the story about like how you and Jonathan met and how Arkai came to be in the first place. Like, tell me some of that story, because I imagine that story just gets sweeter and sweeter with each of the new elements that are sort of added as far as the direction that you two are pointed together here. The history just gets even cooler.
Yeah, it definitely feels more and more serendipitous of like, if there's like a multiverse sort of like framing, it's the kind of thing where like in all other possible worlds, this shouldn't have happened. This didn't happen. And this is the one where it did. So to roll the clocks back a little bit, Jonathan and I met 7.5 years ago, summer of 2018.
Okay.
We both studied at the Juilliard School in New York City. We both came out here to study Western classical music, right? The music of Brahms and Beethoven and Mahler and Shostakovich, that great tradition. And so we were both studying there at the same time. We're a couple years apart, but we definitely overlapped by a couple years.
Okay.
And miraculously, we never met. Which is the shocking thing, because Juilliard is one building. It's about 700 students, but that's including dance, drama, and music, undergrads, grad students, doctoral students. It's a tiny, tiny community. And so typically you can't help but basically meet everybody, right? Especially as string players. I'm sure we were playing an orchestra together. There was one concert, one chamber music recital where I know I was on the first half with my group. He was on the second half. But because I had to run off to, I don't know, some extra rehearsal, I left at the intermission. Didn't even get to see him play. Never met. Right? Wasn't supposed to happen yet. So we were at Juilliard at the same time. Never met. Until the summer of 2018, which was the summer before my last year of grad school, and he had just finished the May before that.
Okay.
And we were both nominated by the school to be student ambassadors for a conference that was being hosted there that summer. It was a gathering of about 50 or 60 young artist entrepreneur types from around the country for something called the Artist as Citizen Conference. And so there we were repping Juilliard, meeting all these other young people. Again, we met for the first time there, one of those icebreaker sorts of things.
Yes.
But we were just like, oh, you're the other Juilliard guy. And so a couple days later into the conference, after classes, everyone got together and wanted to have like a party together. And so we literally all gathered in the Juilliard dorm lounge.
Okay.
And so, everyone was there. Jonathan and I happened to have our instruments with us. And so we got them out and we just started to play. The technical word for what we did is we jammed.
Yes, a good old jam.
And for a good old jam. And the kind of serendipitous thing is that no one at Juilliard jams. Or I should say, no one in the classical division, because there's jazz. No classical people know how to jam. Improvisation is a lost art form, and it is something that if you asked your average classically trained musician to just play something, make something up on the spot, they'd kind of give you the deer in the headlights look. We're trained, right, to read from sheet music. We're really good at that, right? That is the training. It's to play works that have already been composed and written down. But if you ask someone to, just lay down a fat groove, that's Greek. And so, but Jonathan and I, we both prior to that conference, prior to that summer, we had both been on our own journeys of exploration because both of us completely independently had been really curious about other kinds of music that we loved. He had been going and exploring the world of jazz and global music. I had been kind of going through the avant-garde, free improvisation worlds.
Nice.
And so by the time we got to this moment, we were able to jam, and it was electric. Everyone else in the room, right, those other students with us, started dancing and singing, and it was just one of these euphoric moments that is impossible to recreate. It was just lightning in a bottle. It went on for over an hour, just one of these, like, you know, the closest thing I can think of is like when you're at a really good conference, you know, like I think back to like Urbana, things like that, like these moments that are just so like mountaintop moments. That was like that in the room. And so, you know, we all kind of like awake from this reverie. And Jonathan and I are like, oh, that was really cool. Like, I didn't know there was someone else at Juilliard who could do that. But then, right, that was our first meeting. It wasn't a verbal conversation. It was a musical conversation.
Wow.
And to find someone else who was such a kindred spirit, who obviously had both the curiosity, but also the initiative to go and explore, right? To go beyond the lines, outside of what the tradition had. It was an eye-opening moment.
Wow.
So that was the first meeting, but then, you know, like any good relationship, you can't just have one good date. And so then the rest of the story proceeds from there. But that was it was a very foreshadowing moment.
Okay.
All the elements that were in that jam, right, in a very nascent form, are the same things that we're still doing to this day.
That's awesome. Okay, so then in movie terms, that was the meet cute right there. That was the moment, and a powerful one. I would imagine that the two of you, especially being in a context that the jam is not a thing, there would also, I would have to think that there's also a moment of like this sort of superhero experience, like performing for performers in a way that blows their mind. You know, that's like a comedian who makes comedians laugh. That is just like, this doesn't happen. And so like to have those moments where other people who are really, I would have to think, fantastic at what they do, to be just sort of in awe of that moment, it feels like that must have been really special. Did you know that, like, from there, was it like, okay, we need to take a next step here, or was it just another sort of, our paths just crossed again down the road, and that's where things took off? Like, was it purposeful after that, or was it still just sort of like, that was cool, we'll see what happens next?
That first meeting was definitely just the meet cute, and that was cool. And we had no intentions, no plans, no instant like, oh, we got to draw up a 3-year strategic vision for what. No.
Sure.
It was just like, that was an amazing experience. And that's why I kind of liken it to a great first date. But if there's no follow up, right, an amazing connection might just be a one-time connection. And so it was the next thing that came around about 2 months later, where then we had an opportunity to perform again, and then received a similar reception, but that time not just with peers, but with industry professionals. And then that led to our first like private event at a penthouse on Fifth Avenue, where we had the same reception. And that was, 3 times in a row, you're like, okay, we should have a conversation about this. And
much like podcasting together.
Exactly, man. If you can get past the 3rd episode, you're in it. You need to come up with a good title, good thumbnails.
Exactly. That's okay. So there were some next steps where you were collaborating together, but had like conversations around. Was that when you started talking about like, maybe this should be a real thing? Like, does Arkai start to come together after those first 2 or 3 times playing together, or is there still some time?
It was after, I think, specifically that 3rd performance where we're in this penthouse, industry professionals, legends, people who we've like grown up hearing about. When, they gave us a standing ovation, and then we had to talk to them afterwards while like nibbling on hors d'oeuvres. And after that night, we were like, we can't be the Jonathan and Philip duo. Like, we have to have like an Instagram. We need to be able to point these people somewhere. And I think that was probably, if there was a single moment, I think that would be the moment where we went from thinking, hey, this is like a cool thing, a fun collaboration, to maybe we should try to formalize this a little bit and keep exploring. Yeah. But of course, right, again, like with so many relationships, be they romantic or professional, you go from kind of level to level of kind of deepening the relationship, of vulnerability, of sacrifice in that. And so it really was step by step for us as well, right? One project, one performance, one opportunity. And then right as you get deeper into that, then starting to say no to things, right? Like, oh, I'm going to turn that down to make space for this, or I'm going to leave this because I believe that this thing that's starting to bubble up might be worth something. Yeah. And again, it took years to really discover like what that thing could be. But I'm so glad that we took that risk and that both of us were willing to kind of dive into the deep end with each other, because it has unlocked something that I think is really beautiful and that people connect with. That's really the thing that I think spurred us to take it seriously, as we saw both at that first jam with other young people, then at the conference in September where we kind of wrote our very first piece and had industry professionals and dignitaries, right? And they all responded. And then that penthouse apartment, again, with this distinguished industry professionals, right? And they responded. When we realized that this connection that we had was somehow creating something that spoke really powerfully to people. Yeah. And for us, kind of felt easy per se, right? It felt natural. It felt like slipping into a well-worn glove. Yeah. I think when we were noticing that people were responding that consistently, that's when we were like, we have to see what we could do with this. Yeah.
Wow. Philip, so this is one half of the story of the history that I want to hear. The other is something that, at least in portions of this, is running right alongside of it, and that's your time with InterVarsity. Now, I know that there was not a lot of overlap between your time with InterVarsity and your time, like, sort of discovering this musical experience with Jonathan and asking these questions about, like, where are we going? But even so, I would love to know your time with InterVarsity through Juilliard Christian Fellowship. Like, what was going on there? Like, tell me that story, how you met, how it was impacting you during that season of life. Like, what was going on? Because I feel like that is an important part of the trajectory, and maybe even the way that you interpret and lean in or lean back from some of these elements that you're experiencing with Arkai now.
Totally. In some ways, I think of it like if my professional life is the paint or the brushstrokes of an art piece, that this part of my life, right, my spiritual foundation, is actually the canvas on which that's painted, right? It's the texture through which you get to see the artwork. Right. If the canvas is a different texture or is, inconsistent or something, right, that's going to affect what comes through, even if it's not immediately visible. Yeah. And so like you were saying, by the time I met Jonathan and started Arkai, that's as I was on the tail end of my time at Juilliard. Yeah. But for 6 years, Juilliard Christian Fellowship, the InterVarsity chapter there, was one of the most important pillars of those 6 years. I was deeply involved with them from my very first semester as a freshman. But it's kind of funny. I was thinking back to how I even got started or discovered them. For context, I grew up in a Christian household in Southern California, and so I had a robust faith background already. But still, when you make that leap from living at home in the community that you've grown up in, and then fly to the other side of the country, new community, new everything, right? That still is a transition. Yeah. And can be, right, a bit of a derailment moment. It very easily can be. But I think it was during orientation, right? During that first week, during what I would later, as a JCF leader, come to know was called NSO, New Student Outreach. I got got recruited through an NSO event where, two people, I think I remember the two girls who were there. Oh, what a memory. But they knocked on my tiny little Juilliard dorm room door and they said, hey, we're with this group called Juilliard Christian Fellowship, and we have some like free banana pudding in the lounge. If you want to come down and like check it out and just eat some free food, because the way to any college student's heart is free food.
Absolutely. But I think this is the first time I've heard about banana pudding being specifically that food item.
Oh, John, it's because you need to come to New York City and experience Magnolia Bakery's banana pudding.
Oh,
it is the
so
stuff.
This is a thing. This is like a local thing.
Oh, the nectar of heaven.
Oh,
it's so
my
good.
Goodness.
So yeah, I got found through an NSO event. I probably would have eventually discovered that because they were the only Christian club on campus. But still, to be the fact that intentional programming, right? That very intentional scattering of nets during that pivotal first few days of orientation. I think that's really significant that their team and their the InterVarsity staff member, they were casting the vision to do these events. So I got found all the way from my freshman year. And then as it would happen, almost all the leadership that freshman year that I was part of the fellowship, they all graduated that year. Oh. So the next year it was kind of the, what's going to happen? And so the leadership mantle kind of ended up falling to myself and 3 other guys who became and still are some of my dearest friends in the world.
Wow.
And I got to credit our InterVarsity staff member at the time, Tim Craig, who I think is now a regional director. The way that he both cast vision, but then also discipled us so intentionally, it changed my life for sure. I'm sure the other guys would agree. But that's I think that call into leadership that second year, it changed the course of my 6 years, because when you go from being a receiver of something, right? I'm going to show up to these programs, right? I'm part of this community, to then taking ownership of a community, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to reach my friends. I am responsible for putting on these programs. It's a mindset shift. And so then I ended up helping lead that chapter through the next 5 years, all the way through the end of my grad school. And so all these foundations, right? Thinking back to that idea of the canvas, right? These foundations of personal discipleship, of leadership training, of creating rhythms of rest through like the retreats that would go on, right? Of taking yourself out of the pressure cooker and saying, no, we need to take some time for rest and to just like seek the Lord. And then kind of tying that into the importance of that personal and communal relationship with God, right? Both, how are you in your quiet time, in your feasting on the word? How are you pursuing that? And then also as a community, how are we growing in this together? Yeah. Those were all elements it was just the ocean in which I was swimming for 5 years. And so it was setting the texture of that canvas, so that when I left school, that was the foundation of my adult faith practice.
Yeah. So then can you speak just a little bit to, my assumption is that these experiences probably prepared you in a way that is unique to maybe many of your peers in the industry who didn't have this kind of background or these experiences. Can you speak a little bit to, this is how that time and how the Lord through JCF was preparing me for life in the industry? Like, what are some of the unique things that brings to you for this road that you've been walking on for the last 8 years or so?
Yeah. Well, one of the unique things about JCF is that it was a InterVarsity ministry to Juilliard Conservatory students, who are a very strange breed of students. It's because Juilliard itself is such an intense environment. And so learning how to cultivate a faith community in that environment, right? It's like rocky soil, to use the parable analogy. Because it's like so much of New York itself, everyone is so busy, right? And busyness is a badge of honor, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's like
I'm busier than you. Beat that.
Oh, exactly. Right. You have to play it off as a self-deprecating thing, like, such a hard night, only 4 hours of sleep, but 8 hours of practice. Woe is me. And so, right. A little bit joking, but that's the environment, right? And It's because you're in an environment of excellence, right? Everyone is trying to become the very best artist that they can. And so naturally, and very high achievers. So you're in this intense environment where you're trying to, as a ministry, you're trying to figure out how do you both reach people within that, knowing the limitations, the contexts that these students are in, but then also how do you speak to that world uniquely, right? What does it mean to bring your faith into a super high intensity environment, like where there's extreme irregularity, right? What does that mean to cultivate healthy rhythms when the rest of the rhythms of your life are totally inconsistent? So there are a lot of these, like just the very nature of being at a place like Juilliard, I think helps prepare me for the professional world, because go figure. Yeah. It doesn't get any easier, right? Life never slows down. Yeah. And, still being in the world of music and entertainment, all those things are still there. My schedule with Jonathan is wildly irregular, right? There's okay, a couple months we're here in New York, we're working in the studio, we're putting out new music, and then, 4 months we're going to be basically jetting around the world, flying around. You're going from Airbnb to hotel to the venue, right? You're waking up for 6 a.m. flights or lobby calls. Wildly irregular. And so the practice, at least from those 6 years of, okay, that's the context of your life. What does it mean? What does it look like for you to develop and maintain and cultivate that personal and communal relationship with the Lord? What does that mean to find your field of ministry, even when it doesn't look like a regular office workplace? All these questions, I think it maps very well, because it's kind of the same environment.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, as you said, you're stepping into a world of irregularity and inconsistent schedules, and who knows what kind of big win you're going to get, or what kind of work you're going to put in that in the end fizzles out for nothing. And all of this back and forth and ebb and flow, that there is a need for like something that is deeply rooted and grounded and consistent through all of those, which, to some degree is like the case for any adult, so that we no longer have like other adults. Like the adults are not coming. It's just us now. And we have to be able to put those things in place for ourselves. And it sounds to me like your experience on campus with JCF was very informative and influential in you learning how do I set up these consistent pillars and experiences so that when life is irregular, I have something to fall back on. And that is, this consistent, trustworthy, faithful God who is going to carry me through the wins and the losses and the boring stuff in between. And that has been a stabilizing force in this world that you have walked through since graduating, and even before graduating, and the places that it felt that you're experiencing that on campus. And I wonder, Philip, then knowing that. Not being in the industry, I don't know whether the amount of time between sort of establishing Arkai and this recent Grammy win, I don't know if that feels like, wow, that was a short timeline compared to most Grammy winners, or if it felt like this has been a slog and it's been a lot of hard work, and maybe it just depends on the day. But tell me about that time in between. What was that season like, and how did you see God at work in the context that you were sort of moving through over these last 8 years or so?
Well, to those two questions, I would say yes to both.
Okay.
Yes, as in, I think it is, we are rather precocious to be Grammy winners. We're definitely in the kind of genre world and side of the industry we're in, we're quite young. But it's also been absolutely a slog, and many seasons.
Those things could be true at the same time.
Oh my gosh! Right, especially in the entertainment world, right? Most people, especially in the social media world we live in, most people only see the flashy things you put on social media, but they don't see us in our Airbnb in Helsinki last June going over Mix 17F. Literally pulling our hair out, I'm literally at my wit's end, and a joking example, but it's yeah, it's incredibly hard work. Not only just being a musician, but building something, right? Anyone who is a starter or a founder, right? Could be an app startup or, building a small business, brick and mortar, right? Artist. Anyone who's built anything from scratch knows it's so much more work than you could ever imagine. But so both things are true. Yeah. But to try to take a 40,000 foot view of both kind of mirroring the professional growth, but then also the spiritual journey. They both have been roller coasters. There are, and in that way, they are very similar. They track, and then in some ways they deviate sharply. I think maybe more interesting is speaking to I'll speak to the faith journey first. 8 years feels like quite a time, but I distinctly remember seasons of faith, right? Seasons where it's just I'm rock solid. I feel really plugged in. I feel like I'm, hearing the Lord, feeling just very vibrant in my faith. But then, right, there was a season of deep sin and shame, right? Deep brokenness, the lowest I've ever been, the furthest I've ever been from the Lord. And then a season of immense grace and mercy where the Lord literally extracted me from a situation that I was powerless to get myself out of. Very much a prodigal son sort of moment. And it was a season of rehabilitation, where it was wow, so much has been shattered. So many foundations of my faith, so many foundations of my identity have been shattered in this season. And now I'm just kind of left looking at these pieces. But at least I'm out. Thank you, Lord, for pulling me out. And now, how do I, trust the Lord and walk on this slow journey of healing and growth, from that experience. And then I would say the season I'm in now has been one of grace-filled surrender. I think that's the words that came to mind. And I think this is even the season that the last time we spoke last year, we were talking about this, right?
Yes.
The image of open hands. Yes. I still feel like that's the season that I'm in right now. And so right there, it's been a roller coaster in terms of all of those things. I actually, last year, the chapter at the InterVarsity chapter at Juilliard invited me to come back and speak with their current students from the perspective I have. And in prepping for that, I brought these 2 pictures with me that I chuckled at myself when I made these, but I think that they might be fun to share in this context as well.
Yeah, please do.
So oftentimes we hear the verse Proverbs 3:5, right? Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your paths straight. And maybe some people, myself included, when I grew up hearing this verse, this is kind of the image that came to mind, right? A straight path, right? That means that God's going to make everything kind of just work out and it's going to be sunshine and rainbows, right? It's almost maybe akin to a prosperity gospel sort of reading of that, right? That if you give God the stuff he wants, then he'll give you the stuff you want.
Very transactional.
And and I feel like the last couple years of my life, especially that roller coaster that I just described, I came to think of Proverbs 3:5 more like this image.
Oh, wow. If you all aren't watching on YouTube or Spotify, you should flip over so you can actually see the images that Philip is showing me here. This is great.
Yeah, so that first image is literally a straight path leading into a sunrise, surrounded by flowers and a beautiful green prairie. And then this second image is a similarly straight path, but shrouded in fog, covered, surrounded by dark, scary forests, and leading into an unknown destination. And I feel like this is, again, it's kind of a loose example, a loose analogy, but I feel like this has kind of felt more true where it's the Lord is opening doors, the Lord's making your path straight, but you can't see where you're going to. Maybe you'll know in hindsight. It might be scary, right? It might be a little bit unknown and mysterious, but the path is straight.
It is. And it makes me think of sort of overlaying that Proverbs 3 with Psalm 23. And what if this straight path that the Lord is leading me on is a path that leads through the valley of the shadow of death? Like, that's a scary thing. But the Lord is the one who is directing and leading and providing through all of those things. And what does it look like to lean hard into the Lord when that's what the straight path looks like, is still a scary path? Exactly.
And I think for me, that has mapped onto both the professional journey, but also my spiritual journey, right? That the spiritual journey is not one that I 8 years ago would have said, yeah, that's right, what a path of spiritual growth is going to look like, right? In my head, it would have been, right, you never make any mistakes, you never have any moments of doubt or insecurity or failure, and you just become this, like, glowing golden beacon for Jesus that everyone sees.
It's all up and to the right.
Exactly. And in hindsight, I see now that the roller coaster, right, both the highs and, more importantly, the lows that I went through, have actually formed me in a way that I wouldn't have been formed otherwise. And they've given me the testimony that I now have, the way that I can relate to people and speak to them from a very real experience. That wouldn't have happened had I not gone through those deep pits of despair and shame and brokenness and doubt. And similarly on the professional side, the path is clear in hindsight, but going through it, you have no idea what's happening. You don't know that email is going to come in offering you that incredible opportunity that opens up relationships 5 years down the line. You don't know that person is going to be sitting in the audience and they're going to be so moved that they are then going to open up their entire world to you.
Wow.
So many, we could do an entire podcast just on the inexplicable family trees of relationships that have happened that started with one person 7 years ago and now have blossomed into entire, beautiful trees of our career. But
there's our episode 3 right there, Philip. You just mapped it out for us.
Amazing. Now we just got to come up with that name. All right.
Yes. Oh man. The some of those things that it's easy once you can, it's doing a maze in reverse. Like, well, okay, now I know where this ends. So it's easy to see the blocked off sections and where the openings are. And I can trace it right back to the beginning. No problem. Why was that ever hard? But when you're doing the maze forward, as our lives are, until we take a moment to look back, it's confusing and not all of those pieces line up and make sense. And yet somehow the Lord in his grace and faithfulness is using those, even the times that we bump into the wall and get it totally wrong. He's using those to accomplish his purposes and to do good for us and for those around us. And that is what a grace for us that is our reality. Philip, do you have time? You and I are at time here as we're talking. Do you have time for one last question, or
absolutely?
Do you need to okay, cool.
No, I'm good.
I do not want to. I do not want to overspend the ask that I made here. Then, oh man, I'm seeing now here that I have. How much time do you have?
We can do a couple questions. Yeah.
Okay. I would really love to ask these last two questions here. So then, taking us back to where we started, the Grammy win. What does winning a Grammy mean to you in light of following Jesus? Like, how does that influence the way that you interpret the win and what comes next out of it? Like, all of the story that you've been telling us, this journey that you've been on. So then how does that influence the way that you see that win and what comes next?
Yeah, absolutely. Over the past couple of months, while we've been very, very intensely focused on this whole Grammy process, there was a song that my church here in New York wrote that has kind of been my personal anthem, almost my personal devotional. It's a song called Christ is All. Okay. And there's so many amazing lyrics in it, in the verse and the chorus, but specifically with regards to the win itself at the Grammys, the lyric that comes to mind is the bridge, which says, or it starts with, How I long to join the saints who sing forever in devotion. And here's the juicy part. Where the bottles that we've broken turn to crowns that we cast down. Whoa. So, right, it's kind of mixing some biblical metaphors there, but right, the broken bottle, right, the alabaster jar of the woman who anoints Jesus' feet, right? The idea of taking the most costly sacrifice that we have and breaking that at Jesus' feet. Okay, that's the first image. Where the bottles that we've broken, our personal sacrifice, turn to crowns that we cast down, right? Pulling that kind of revelation metaphor of the elders casting their crowns. So the way I interpret that is, right, the utmost personal sacrifice that we have is turned into a crown that then we give back to Jesus. And so in my own life, right, basically all of who I am goes into Arkai, goes into this artistic project. And now, right, that broken bottle has turned into a crown, literally a golden Grammy.
Yes.
And that's amazing. But then it is our joy as Christians and as Christ followers to then cast that crown back at the feet of Jesus and to tell people, right, yes, I have been awarded this incredible honor, and not going to knock that or disparage that, but what is my relationship to that? That's just something that I get to put at the feet of Jesus again and say, thank you, Lord. Thank you for this gift. Thank you for the ways in which I have been able to bless others and to glorify you through this gift, and for the ways in which I will hopefully continue to be able to bless others and glorify you through this gift. So I think that lyric perfectly encapsulates how I feel about it and how I hope that this moment is able to bless others.
Yes. Wow. What an image. And what and that's not an easy stance to take. I mean, this would be going back to some of the imagery that we talked about before of the open hands, holding with open hands, not only holding with open hands the possibilities of what could come and saying, like, Lord, whether you want to like accelerate this or not, like that's up to you. And I'm going to receive whatever it is that you put here, or I'm going to let you take back whatever you take out of my hands. But then also to say, like, once the Lord does just like plop something really exciting in those open hands, that's when it feels really easy to close them up and say, this is now mine forever. And I am not letting go of this, thanks, but this is for me now. And to say like, nope, even once that is put into my hands, they stay open, because what the Lord has given to me belongs to him. And what can I do to offer this back up, to reinvest this back into God's kingdom and for his glory? And boy, may it be so. May that be the posture of your heart moving forward, and that the Lord would accomplish what he wants to accomplish through those things. That is a beautiful image. And the last question that I want to know, Philip, this is the question that I ask every one of our guests. And especially by the time we get to the end, it is meant to be like a duh kind of question. So treat it as such. That's totally fine. But Philip, would you say that your work with Arkai and the world of music in general that you are navigating, that is a place where you get to partner with God in his world-changing work? And if so, how so?
Well, I heard that the right answer is yes. So
the right answer can be no. If the answer is no, but
absolutely. No, it's I think that's been the greatest joy in the whole journey is I've constantly been asking myself, over the past 8 years, like, am I pursuing this for my own vanity, for my own sense, or even not even just vanity, but like it's my own artistic project, right? It's all the things I want to do, or do I feel a sense of calling and vocation into this? And I think more and more the Lord's been able to, has shown me and has opened up opportunities where I get to see little bits of where the work that I'm doing, right? Just me trying to be faithful to the work and to the giftings have been able to lead to gospel moments, right? Lead to conversations. I was literally reading in a commentary this morning by N.T. Wright. He has a whole book that's a commentary on Romans 8. It is juicy. Highly recommend to anyone listening.
Good to know.
But he was talking, actually, I'm going to pull together two very unexpected things. Okay. It's N.T. Wright and Stranger Things. I was literally just thinking about this morning, reflecting. So N.T. Wright is talking about how we as, right, in Romans 8, it's the section where Paul is talking about we're no longer debtors to sin, right, and to the law of sin and death, but we are now not only called to be children of God, but if we're called to be children, then we're also heirs and co-heirs with Christ. Mind-blowing stuff. Yeah. N.T. Wright is kind of explicating this and talking about how we are, right, the new creation that God will bring into the world, right, that's talked about in Revelation, right, the new Jerusalem coming down to earth, right, that it's not heaven is, right, some place where your disembodied spirit floats to when you die, but no, it's actually all of creation, physicality and all, is redeemed. And that we as Christ followers, we're actually bringing that new creation into the present now. We're almost like the forebearers or the test pilots, kind of like pulling open these little peeks into what that new creation will look like, right? The resurrection life that God offers is in us if the Spirit is in you. And so now here's the magic trick, right? Thinking about, because I've been watching Stranger Things season 5 a little bit late, but in the show, right, the kids and the families, all the characters, right, they're dealing with this crazy upside down is the world, right, where all the monsters live and the villains are, and it looks just like their normal world, except it's full of decay and rot and like nasty stuff. And every now and then, right, the nasty stuff, right, the monsters get into the real world, and little bits of that seep into it. And I was thinking as I was thinking on it as I was reflecting on N.T. Wright. Our Christian theology is kind of like that, except flipped, right? It's almost like we all are living in the upside down, right? We live in the world where it's normalized that we live with death and decay and suffering and entropy. And actually, the real world, right, the new creation, kind of looks like what we're experiencing now, except that it is right, there is no death and decay, right? No, every tear will be wiped from every eye, right? The trees growing along the river of life that are for the healing of the nations. And we get to be these little agents where we're pulling open these little tears in the fabric of reality, and little bits of not the bad stuff, but the good stuff is actually seeping through. Yeah. And so whether, I feel a specific connection to that as a creative, because I feel like the work that we get to do is like literally can be little manifestations of that, right? Spiritually powerful moments that enliven people and reshape people's imaginations and spiritual realities to the new creation that God is bringing into the world. But then, not only as a creative, but I think all of us, right, as Christ followers, we all have the calling and the vocation to do that, right? To be pulling open these little tears in the fabric of reality to point people to the real, more beautiful, more glorious world that God imagines and will bring to pass.
Thanks for tuning in, alumni. If you know someone who would enjoy the InterVarsity World Changers podcast, please be sure to share the episode with them. You can also support the podcast by leaving a rating and a review, or by visiting our donation page in the show notes. InterVarsity World Changers is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Centera, and edited by Caleb Leppert. Our theme song is Crazy by InterVarsity alumnus Andy Mineo. Go change that world, alumni.